I am Jacob A. I attend Lake City High School and I'm 18 years old.
I am Beckham. I'm a full-time student at UNR studying biology, and I'm 22 years old.
Hi, my name is Mason. I'm a professional debater on TikTok, and I'm 26 years old.
My name is Jonathan. I'm 44 years old. I'm a high school teacher.
Hi, I am Vanessa. I worked as a nurse for 15 years and I am 37 years old.
I'm Elijah. I'm 64 years old. I'm currently a retired engineer, but I now do local work at my church.
Hello everyone, welcome to Middle Ground. Today's topic is abortion. We're hoping to come to conversations and come to an agreement. Let's meet the contestants. The first topic we'll be discussing today is abortion murder. If you would like to debate this topic, please have a seat.
Can we first agree on the terms that abortion is the intentional termination of pregnancy by removal or expulsion of an embryo or fetus?
So in my opinion, abortion should never be medically necessary, as science can back up the life begins at conception. And once we consider that a human life, it is a sin to murder this life.
That is a very valid point. We have to consider that not all pregnancies are ideal. Sometimes a woman's health is at risk, and the only option for her to survive may be abortion. Medical professionals must have the autonomy to make these decisions based on the woman's health. This is where I struggle with the abortion as murder argument. It doesn't seem like a fair comparison when the life of the mother is on the line.
Okay, but there isn't a difference between saving a life and ending one. I understand there can be health risks, but why does it have to be the choice of killing another life? What if we found ways to protect both lives? Or at least tried all the other alternatives before making that decision? But for me, the life that the baby starts at conception, once you start defining certain lives as more important than others, where do we draw the line? Why does the life of the child take second place? That's why I believe abortion is morally wrong.
That's an interesting perspective. So it sounds like there's a strong moral aspect here. But how do we balance that with situations like unplanned pregnancies or pregnancies due to rape or incest? These are sensitive and emotional situations. How should society handle these cases?
The thing about unplanned pregnancies, especially in cases of rape or incest, is that it's often not about what someone wants, but rather what they need. Abortion in these extreme cases can sometimes be seen as lesser evil in very traumatic situations. I know it's difficult to consider, but we should force someone to carry a pregnancy under these circumstances when the emotional and psychological impact can be devastating.
I understand that it's a terrible situation, but I don't think we can just take away the rights of the unborn child because of a traumatic situation. Where do we stop once we start saying some lives are more valuable than others?
I agree with Elijah to some extent, but what if we focused on reducing the number of abortions in general? Maybe if we put more focus on education, better access to contraception, and supporting women through unplanned pregnancies, we could avoid some of these situations where abortion feels like the only option.
That's an interesting thought, Jacob. I'm all for preventive measures like education and contraception, but we need to also accept that all the education and resources, some people will still find themselves in situations where they feel like abortion is their only option. Forcing someone to carry a pregnancy to term, especially when they don't want to, can have long-term effects on their mental health, financial stability, and overall life trajectory.
Unfortunately, the time is up. Now let's try to find some common ground. Is there some ways we can agree on situations where abortion should or shouldn't be allowed, or ways to approach this issue more compassionately?
I think at the very least, we could agree that education is key. If we focus on making sure everyone has access to contraception, there could be fewer unplanned pregnancies to begin with. And if abortion is an option, maybe it should be only available in certain cases, like when the mother's life is at risk.
I think we need to accept that each individual situation is different. There has to be room for nuance. For example, women who experience rape or incest need a safe and accessible option to decide what's best for them. It's not just about laws. It's about listening to individual needs and empowering people to make informed choices.
I agree that support is important. I can see the value in education and conception. However, I still believe that abortion shouldn't be seen as first option for anyone. But I do think that the debate should also center on how we can provide better support to women in crisis situations. That's where we can find real common ground.
It seems we have a lot of areas we can find agreement on. Perhaps we could agree that education, access to contraception, and supporting women in crisis situations could be the foundation of a more nuanced approach to abortion. While opinions on morality of abortion may differ, maybe we can all agree that reducing the need for it should be a common. Now it's time for the next topic. Now that we've talked about the personal and moral aspects of abortion, let's shift the focus. What do you think about the role of the government in this issue? Should the government have a say on whether or not a woman can have an abortion?
Some level of involvement, but not in terms of controlling the decision directly. The government can regulate things like safety standards for medical procedures, ensuring that clinics and healthcare professionals are properly equipped to provide safe and legal abortions. But when it comes to the personal decision, it should be left to the woman and her healthcare provider. We should trust medical professionals to make informed decisions and the government's role to protect the health and safety of everyone involved.
I understand the need for safety regulations, but I believe the government has a larger role to play in ensuring equal access. In some parts of the country, women have very limited access to abortion services, even if it's legal. The government should ensure that abortion is accessible to all women, regardless of where they are, where they live, or their financial situation. They should also fund educational programs that inform people about their reproductive rights and options.
I think there's a deeper issue at play here. The government's role should be to create laws that protect both the mother and the unborn child. There has to be a balance between individual rights and the sanctity of life. The government can't just ignore the life of the fetus and leave it entirely up to the woman. But I do agree with the idea that the government should provide resources for education and healthcare to make sure women are fully informed and supported, especially when it comes to unplanned pregnancies.
So we're hearing that there's an agreement on the need for safety regulations and support, but also a clear division on whether the government should be involved in limiting access based on moral or ethical considerations. Participant 5, you mentioned accessibility. Should the government be responsible for funding abortion services?
If the government mandates the legality of abortion, they should be responsible for making sure it's available to all people, regardless of their economic background. Think about it. If a woman can't afford an abortion, it might push her into unsafe or illegal procedures. That's not only dangerous for her, but also a burden on the healthcare system in the long run. The government can't just make it legal and then leave women to figure it out on their own. Access is a human right, and we can't ignore that.
I agree with the need for accessibility, but I'm not sure the government should fund abortions directly. There are so many healthcare needs out there, and allocating resources to fund abortion services may detract from other pressing issues. I think it would be better if the government focused on policies and that prevent unwanted pregnancies in the first place. Things like sex education, contraception access, and healthcare funding for low-income communities. That way, fewer women might find themselves needing an abortion in the first place.
I think the government has a duty to regulate abortion in a way that protects the rights of both the woman and the unborn child. But I also agree that the government should provide comprehensive sexual education and healthcare resources. It's not enough just to say abortion is legal. We need to be proactive and about preventing the need for it. We can't ignore the fact that in certain situations, women may still need access to abortions, and making sure that happens in a safe and regulated way should be part of the government. Need access to abortion, and making sure that happens in a safe and regulated way should be part of the government's responsibility. So it sounds like there's a consensus on the importance of education and healthcare resources. But when it comes to funding abortions or restricting access, there's a divide. Participant 3, you seem to think that the government should focus more on prevention, while participant 5 believes the government should ensure access. How can we find a middle ground here?
Maybe we could focus on more holistic approach. If we made contraception more widely available and increased access to family planning services, the need for abortion might naturally decrease. In that case, the government's role could be in providing those services rather than funding abortion procedures directly. Prevention can be just as important as treatment.
I see your point, and I agree that prevention is key. But let's not forget that for some women, contraception fails or they may have no access to it. In these cases, abortion is still necessary. The government's role should be to ensure, in those circumstances, a woman can still make a choice without having to worry about her financial situation. We can't rely solely on prevention. There will always be situations where abortion is the only option.
I think we can find a balance by agreeing that the government should regulate abortion to ensure it's safe and accessible, but also put more emphasis on preventative measures if we can get to a place where fewer women need abortions, but still provide options for those who do. we're in a better position. The government role should be to support both the potential mother and the child, balancing the needs of both.
It seems like we're finding a middle ground. There's an agreement that the government should regulate abortion in a way that protects health and safety, but also that there's a need for preventative measures like contraception and education. In a perfect world, fewer women would have need for abortions, but if the need arises, the government should ensure that access is available and safe.